to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker. I'll vote Barry.
Has everyone recorded their presence? So the clerk will take the call. There being 123 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read a journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, February the 28th, 2021.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the journal from the previous day.
So ordered, petitions, memorials, and other papers. Introduction of House bills. The clerk will read the bills and their committee assignment.
House Bill 1365, Delegate Corman, House Rules. House Bill 1366, Delegate Bridges, House Rules. By order, Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
The clerk will read the bond initiatives and the committee assignment.
Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 25, referred to Appropriations. Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 26, referred to Appropriations.
Message from the Senate. Consent calendar. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 77, Senator Griffith, Environment and Transportation.
Recognizing majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of Senate Bill 77 be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Quorum call. And could members please take their seats?
Madam Speaker. 27.
Calendar of clerk will take the call. There are 120 members present. The House is still in session. Calendar of third reading, House bills number 27. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 113, Board of Revenue Estimates and Bureau of Revenue Estimates, Organization and Operations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 104 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 113, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 366, District Court Commissioners, Arrest Warrants, Recall and Issuance of a Summons.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 366, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 425, Criminal Law, Crimes Involving Computers.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 425, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 712, Bureau of Revenue Estimates, Tax Incident Study, Scope, and Intergovernmental Assistance.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If the gentlelady from Howard County in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just had a couple of questions. There was concern that was expressed in the fiscal note about the ability to actually do what the bill intends. I realize you put an amendment on there requiring the agencies to cooperate, but they talk about the fact that the data doesn't, data in the different departments are not in agreement, and I know that creates a problem. Also, that they would need to access individualized tax data, match it with Social Security numbers. There's a lot of privacy and data concerns, and I just wondered if that had been addressed.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the question, Delegate. So just to take a step back so everyone understands what this does, there are two really important studies the state does that have to do with taxes that I encourage my colleagues to read if they want to, fall asleep more easily. One of them is the tax expenditure report, which is done annually, and the other one is this study, the tax incidence study. And the idea behind this study is that we want to get a sense how our tax policy is actually impacting Marylanders. So the tax incidence study is intended to help us understand how our tax system is affecting Marylanders at different income levels. Right now, the tax incidence study only applies to income tax and sales tax. Obviously, that's only a partial picture. This bill would expand that to cover property tax and motor fuel tax and tolls. To the delegate's question about privacy, my understanding is that they won't have to look anywhere at individual information. They'll be able to do this using economic and statistical modeling, but there will need to be some data provided by MDOT and SDAT to make sure that the Bureau of Revenue Estimates can accurately do that modeling.
Did you address, they also mentioned that when you're trying to find the Maryland motor fuel tax, that's not something paid by individuals, it's paid by the retailers, and how would that be addressed?
Sure. So the motor fuel tax obviously is paid by retailers, but ends up being passed through in the cost of motor fuel that consumers purchase, and economic modeling can get at sort of how that impacts people at different income levels.
So in other words, it's going to be a guess.
It's going to be economic modeling. It's not a guess. Economics is
That's
a
what
science.
I call economic modeling frequently. But, all right, thank you very much.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 117 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 712, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 744, Courts Counsel Appearance Fees, Domestic Violence.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 744, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 756, Office of Legislative Audits, Acceptance and Investigation of Allegations of Fraud, Waste, and Abuse.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 756, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 784, Residential Construction Electric Vehicle Charging.
Is on third reading and final
Madam
passage.
Speaker.
Is there any debate? Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I see your eyes rolling. We had a protracted discussion about this bill a couple days ago, and I was in line to get my questions answered, and we special ordered the bill. And in that light, I did call a family member who is a home builder and asked him about this very thing. And I think the conclusion this is a solution looking for a problem. Home builders are happy to provide extras for their clients because a lot of extra money is made on those extras. Sometimes that's extra for the builder and not for the home buyer. But this creates a problem for small home builders who may be building 10 or 20 house development to get the power from the power provider, which in my region is BGE. And my family member said that they've had trouble providing that today, and it may mean that customers won't get other things because there really is only so much power going to many of these projects. So while I support wholeheartedly electric vehicle charging for homeowners who want to buy that option, this is too prescriptive. We shouldn't be telling home builders they have to offer this. They're doing it. It's not a problem, but it will create a problem in the future. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
We have gentlelady from Hartford in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too was in line when we got cut off, and I don't believe I actually have a clear answer to it. I noticed that, during the discussion, they said that the contractors were against it, and then they said the contractors were now for it. But as I look through the amendments, I don't see one that actually helps the issue of current construction projects that are currently in place. How does this, I guess this will be a question for the sponsor of the bill or the floor leader, how does this affect current projects that contractors have? Do they have, once this is passed, do they have to go back and offer this and change all the contracts that they have already sold on the houses, or how does it actually affect them?
Madam Speaker,
Recognizing the committee chair.
let me read from the plain standard English of the bill. And be it further enacted that this act shall be construed to apply only prospectively, may not be applied or interpreted to have any effect on or application to any new construction for which a building permit is issued before the effective date of the act. I think that pretty clearly states it.
So to clear it up, they are definitely grandfathered in. It does not affect any contracts that are currently in place prior to the date of this bill going into effect.
Correct. And the date of application, the date of the act is October 1st.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Recognizing the gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we did have a long discussion about this, and I want to make it very clear. I have no problem with electric charging stations and whatever option a homeowner wants. But this bill is setting precedent, and we've picked one energy-saving option, which is a popular one right now, and we're putting it in state law. There's no enforceability. There's no penalties. It's pretty much we're just picking this out. And I wonder why we haven't put in here tankless water heaters, or we haven't put in high-efficiency furnaces or heat pumps or whatever, and somebody's going to say, hey, that's a bill for next year. I don't believe that this rises to the level of putting something in state law of what should be mandatory as an option in a home. Most home builders want to give you as many options as possible. And the other thing that it says at the very bottom, the builder or home builder agent shall give to each buyer or prospective buyer notice of the options listed above, which is this one thing, and they also must give specific information about any available rebate programs related to the purchase or installation of electric vehicle charging stations. Well, I'm not sure why home builders now need to be in the business of knowing all of the rebate programs, federal, state, and whatever, that are constantly changing for this one energy-saving item. It seems a little bit onerous to me on a builder to have to present that. Again, no enforceability, no one really going to oversee this. I think that's problematic. And the issue about homes, when they're built, I know it says it's prospective, but there are times when homes are sold, they're built on spec. They don't sign a contract till the house is built. So at what point does this affect that they now got to go back and put this option into the house, depending on when the contract is set? I think that it's an idea that's out there that's a nice idea. It's just it doesn't belong in state law, and it certainly is a precedent for this body to mandate an option, a specific option. Could change next year, and I'll be voting for that reason against this well-intended bill. Thank you.
Any further debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 784, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 826, Real Property, Condominiums, and Homeowners Associations Dispute Settlement.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 826, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 28. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 673, State Healthcare Facilities Employees Alternative Work Weeks.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 673, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 730, Driver's Licenses, Learners Instructional Permits, and Identification Cards, Applications and Renewals.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 730, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 768, Montgomery County Community Choice Energy Pilot Program.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 768, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 781, Corporations and Real Estate Investment Trusts, miscellaneous.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 119 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 781, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 811, State Board of Social Work Examiners, revisions.
is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 811, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 873, State Board for Certification of Residential Child Care Program Professionals, Certification Revisions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 873, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 29. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 325, Talbot County Deer and Turkey Hunting Sundays.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 122 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 325, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 445, Criminal Procedure Charging Procedures Citations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Frederick.
Would the floor leader please rise on this bill? Oh, geez.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Yes.
Definitely in the top two favorite chairs, for sure.
Well.
Fair enough.
Well done.
Well, I'm glad we're starting
off well. Yes.
on a good foot. So I have an issue with this bill, and I'll just put it out there up front. So in the bill, in the language, on page 2, actually page 3, there's basically an exception saying that if this deals with serious injury or an immediate health risk, and that's line 1 through 3, and then there's another exception that says dangerous substance. So my question is, because we did this for marijuana, under 10 grams, enabling a citation to be written, I think some people are kind of on the fence about that, but there was a consensus that maybe that's, a move forward. But what other drugs are besides marijuana on the controlled dangerous substance list that this would apply to?
So what the bill allows is it allows a police officer to decide whether or not he wants to charge a person either by citation or by bringing him into the station for the possession of a small amount of CDS, not marijuana. So anything other than marijuana. So that could be, yes, it could be PCP, it could be heroin, it could be any number of other drugs that are on the Schedule I list that are not marijuana. The idea behind that being, if you can write them a citation and take them directly into inpatient treatment or take them directly into a treatment facility, that is better than taking them to central booking and having them go through that process to be released without real access to treatment right away. It helps get treatment faster.
So if somebody was written a citation, could they be let go?
So they would be given a citation, they would have to appear in court, they would have to still show up for everything with the court, but yes, they could be released at that point. That would be at the discretion of the police officer. The police officer could decide if they believe that they need to be, get full charges and brought into the police station and booked and everything else. If they need that, then they could still do that and they would still have that option. This just gives them that option to write that citation for that charge.
While I'm sympathetic to rehabilitation and rehab, and I think that any Marylander that is struggling with substance abuse, we should do everything we can to help them to deal with that struggle. But I think the language of this bill, it's confusing because it says that if there is a risk dealing with serious injury or immediate health, then this wouldn't apply, but yet we're giving exceptions for literally the most dangerous drugs in our country.
There's two parts to the bill. So the part that you talked about controlled dangerous substances that are not marijuana, that is on the page, on the lower part of the bill. The part that addresses the issue related to, that's actually a shall, and what it says is, and that does not have to do with a controlled dangerous substance that is not marijuana. What that says is, it's a shall if they see any other misdemeanor or local ordinance violation not involving serious injury or immediate health risk. So if they felt like there was an immediate health risk, and one of the points that was made whenever second reader was, I think I slept since then, one of the points that was made is, I don't know if that's fentanyl. I don't know what's going on. Well, then the officers can say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and charge them, and I'm not going to charge them by citation. Furthermore, this is dealing with the shall. This is dealing with the when the officer must do it, and all that language is doing is it does slightly, really genuinely slightly expand the scope of crimes for which they can charge people, where they must charge people by citation, but it limits it to crimes where the maximum penalty is under 90 days. And again, as you point out in the citation, it does open it up that if there is a risk to a person or their health, then they can go ahead and charge them the old-fashioned way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for answering those questions.
Thank you.
So, colleagues, I'm going to be voting against this, and I'll tell you why. I think it's clear in our battle against heroin specifically. This state still sees thousands of heroin deaths a year. In every jurisdiction in this state, we have loved ones. That doesn't stop at any particular demographic. Heroin impacts us all, every district, every county, every socioeconomic background. And the idea that we would come across somebody in possession of heroin and let them go. Whether we want to give them help, I think there's an opportunity, but if you're letting them go, we're not helping them. I understand that there's some discretion for law enforcement in this bill, but it's the most dangerous drugs in our country. That's crystal clear. And I think this sets a wrong example. I think it sets a precedent. It's one thing if it's marijuana, a little bit of marijuana, but this is heroin. And like many folks before me have said, a lot of the heroin's laced with fentanyl. That's literally the most dangerous situation we could be in. We shouldn't be letting these people go. We shouldn't sum it up with a simple citation. And I think this is just the wrong policy. It's the wrong direction. I appreciate the intent, but we need to draw a line in the sand when it comes to heroin and other dangerous drugs. So I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
Chair of the committee.
I'm going to be voting for this legislation, and the reason is we need to get people who have issues related to serious drugs to treatment faster. And this has been an ongoing work that, quite frankly, has been bipartisan. It's been work that was done by the previous county executive pretty extensively, actually here in Anne Arundel County, setting up safe stations across Anne Arundel County where they can go in. If you want 24/7, you can go in and say, I need help, I need treatment for my issues with controlled dangerous substances. If we have a police officer who in their judgment believes that this is a person who's ready for treatment, they find that they have a small amount of controlled dangerous substance, of heroin or on their person, they can give them the citation and take them in Anne Arundel and a bunch of other places across the state. They can take them to one of these places, take them to a stabilization center, get them the treatment that they need, and begin them on that process to recovery. Where that gets harder is if we, and as we've talked about on the Judiciary Committee, and as sort of the larger criminal justice system is talking about this. It is a lot harder when we take them to central booking. They sit there for 24 or 48 hours, and then they might come out on the other side without any real access to treatment. If we can catch them on the front end, and if we can get them into the treatment that they need early, that's what we should be doing, and that's what this bill enables. And that's why I'm going to be voting green. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 445, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 562, Montgomery County Speed Limits Establishment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 104 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 562, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 647, Corporations and Associations, Fees for Processing Articles of Dissolution, Certificates of Cancellation, and Other Documents, repeal.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 647, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 648, Electric Cooperatives, Meetings, Alterations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 648, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 658, Transforming Manufacturing in a Digital Economy Work Group, Making It in Maryland.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Culver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well done. Just caught that. Culver County. So I rise in opposition to this bill, and I think normally if you were on the other side of the aisle, you're probably saying, well, gee, why would a Republican rise in opposition of a bill to transform manufacturing in a digital economy? And it's a work group. And that's because this bill is about central planning. It's really what it is. We just went through an entire year where some companies were considered non-essential and others were essential. This bill does exactly that. It basically says some companies are essential and great, and others we don't really care about. Just read the bill. It says on page 4, I believe, to examine new and viable tax credits and programs for manufacturers to be more competitive and marketable in the new digital economy. Tax credits. Tax credits are a check that's cut by the comptroller and sent to the right companies, the essential companies. We already know there's been a steady exodus from Maryland of businesses, right? Of all sizes, small, medium, large. It's been going on for a long time. And we don't have to look very far to see that. We have parts of the state that are depopulating, including the state's largest city, because companies won't locate there because of the tax structure. So if we had a bill that was a work group to study Maryland's tax structure for all businesses and why they're not opening up here or staying here, hey, I'd be all for it. The bill also says to recommend additional financial support and delivery mechanisms as needed to enable state manufacturers to adopt Industry 4.0 technology. So state support for banking for the right companies. That's what the work group will do, among other things. So it's clear to me that if you're into central planning and you want to pick and choose winners and losers, then this is your bill. If you're all about crony capitalism, there is no better bill than House Bill 658. And crony capitalism is one of the things that is distorting our entire economy, not only in this state, but across the United States, where we have so many companies that get subsidies that aren't available to the average small business. It's time to end it. That's why I voted against this in committee, and that's why I'm voting against it on the House floor. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to be real quick on this because I don't believe an extended debate for me is necessary. When I first opened the bill file to take a look at it to see what was going on, I noticed that the AFL-CIO was in support of it. The second piece of material in the bill file was a support from the Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Baltimore Committee, the Maryland Tech Council, and going on and on and on and on. So I figured, as the committee figured as we were moving along, this was an opportunity to review manufacturing. And the delegate was right, the 4.0, which is basically just a term talking about the new digitized economy. We can never have too much information. We can never have too much information as it relates to training our workforce, preparing those for the new and emerging technologies. The Chamber reported that there were thousands of jobs out there in the last year that went unfulfilled for lack of qualified employees. The AFL-CIO, they're also pushing for the retraining as we move away from old industries and as we move into a greener economy. These workers need training. So all this bill does is provide an opportunity that will be done over in Commerce to review the manufacturing industry and to give those companies and those interested stakeholders a forum for which to express their views. So I don't think we're breaking new ground here or we're doing anything onerous. I think this is just an opportunity to learn. So I would ask that you support House Bill 658.
The gentlelady from Montgomery County and the sponsor of the bill in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the sponsor of the bill, I first have to say it is utterly laughable to call this crony capitalism, because the intent of this bill is simply to make sure that Maryland will be aggressively pursuing manufacturing opportunities across our state. Manufacturing is coming back, and President Biden has an initiative to buy America and make in America. This bill is called the Making It in Maryland because if we're not intentional in making investments and setting policies, then we risk repeating the mistake of the heartland of manufacturing, like the state of Indiana. And last week, the Washington Post had a long article analyzing why Indiana is losing ground in its manufacturing competitiveness to China and Europe, because many companies fail to adapt to Industry 4.0. They fail to see the train coming. With so much technology and R&D in the state of Maryland, we have a tremendous opportunity to capture the back end to make sure things that are researched here are also produced here. These are good paying jobs that will fill the missing middle that we desperately need. I am disappointed that my colleague from ECM did not raise these questions during the discussion and the hearing and voted against it out of politics and ideology. It is very disappointing. So I urge my colleagues, whether you're Republican or Democrat, for the sake of our future, be bold. Let's pursue opportunities and vote green. Thank you.
Well, Madam Speaker, really.
The gentleman from Cole.
I want you to know I'm getting up because I'm not triggered at all. So look, central planning is what has occurred in communist countries, and it doesn't work. And it always leads to a distorted version of economics in those countries, because these kinds of bills buy off the right companies, and usually large companies. And it ends up distorting the entire economic system, because the small companies, that's right, the small companies, don't have access to those things. So the whole purpose of this bill, on the one hand, if you really wanted a digital economy in Maryland and you wanted all those tech companies in Maryland, then why don't we just lower the taxes for everybody? We can do it right now. Let's do it for the small businesses, for the medium-sized businesses, for all the businesses. Just makes perfect sense. But instead, this bill doesn't do that. This bill says it just has to be the right companies that we're going to choose in the state of Maryland. And that's very dangerous. I think it's very dangerous for elected officials to have an opportunity to pick and choose winners and losers. It hasn't worked wherever it's been tried, and it hasn't worked because of the fact that it distorts the economy and creates a crony capitalistic system. I also want to speak finally, Madam Speaker, about the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce in Maryland, most of the time, I'd say 60% of the time, it's the chamber of crony capitalism. It absolutely is. Because they come here and they advocate for just the right businesses. Look who's in charge of the Chamber of Commerce is in your counties. Look who's in charge. It's always the nonprofits. What the heck is a nonprofit on a Chamber of Commerce board for? So for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, I'm voting against this bill.
The gentleman from Baltimore County in the Annex.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Speaker. My family has fairly deep roots in manufacturing. My father's father by blood worked at Beth Steel. My father's father by marriage worked at Beth Steel. My mother's father worked in steel. My father worked at Beth Steel. My uncle worked in steel, and he got me a job working in steel. Anybody here work in manufacturing? Have any time in your life? Okay. So I used to work at a place called Worthington Steel on Kelso Drive across from the courthouse. It was a great job. It was a tough job. It was dirty as hell. You went home tired every day. But for a young man, 19 years old, it made great money. It was a great learning opportunity, and you didn't have to have a college degree to make something for yourself. That was a profit-sharing outfit, and they regularly sit us down. And this country was losing market share at places like China, and we're talking like 98, 99, 2000. And they'd sit us down, and they'd tell us then, why we're losing business to China. And they'd tell us, 4 things like tax structure, cost of energy, cost of labor. And unfortunately, we lost Worthington Steel, and we lost all our manufacturing. And it happened over decades. I mean, the time to take action was 30 years ago, because we had thousands of jobs. I mean, Baltimore had the biggest steel manufacturing plant in the world for a time, and we gave that up. And you know what you do to fix that? You stop taxing the hell out of them. You stop making energy more expensive. You stop driving up the cost of labor. That just can't be avoided. So we know the problems, and frankly, we're here doing the opposite every year. I really lament the loss of manufacturing, because for families like mine, people who didn't necessarily have any connections, education, plans. You know, for a lot of people like me and my father and uncles, that was a great opportunity. But to pass a bill saying we're going to study this after we've done the wrong thing for 30 or 40 years and pass these trade deals shipping jobs to other countries, it just doesn't make any damn sense. So I think the gentleman from Culvert is absolutely right. Well, we're going to give more credits to people like Marriott and Northrop Grumman. And hey, taxes are okay, except for these guys. They need a giant tax credit. That's what policies like this are going to double down on. We need a massive overhaul of our tax code so we can bring back companies that need massive demands on labor. That's what Baltimore needs again. And until we do that, we're going to have a massive gap on the businesses that are looking for labor. And that's why I'm not voting for this bill today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentlelady from Howard County in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just had to get up on this whole issue because over time in the legislature, I have come to wonder why it is that I'm frequently on the opposite side of so many of my colleagues on the left. And I think I finally decided it has to do with our approach and our attitude.
Hold it 1 second, Delegate. Our members in the annex, can you please hold it down because it's triggering over on this side, and we'd like to be able to hear the delegates' comments.
Thank you. I worry that the approach or the attitude that a lot of people have toward business comes from what we see, which is mostly big business. I once told the head of the NFIB that the best thing it could do for its small business groups is to pick a verbal fight with big business because the things that matter to them are so very, very different. We always pass these laws to put regulations on a business, and then we find that you will see that business coming in and say, yes, we can live with this. Of course they can, because those regulations are intended to, not necessarily by our members, but the effect of them is to reduce competition. So many different things that small businesses suffer that are perfectly fine with big business because it has the funds and the lawyers and what it needs to make it work for them. So I just hope in the future, when we talk about business, we can make a distinction between what is good for big business and what is good for small business. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 102 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 658, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Special order calendar number 36. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 314, Plastic Bag Reduction Act. Favorable report is amended on adopted.
Recognizing the maker of the motion, the gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 853-724/1.
Amendment number 1.
Be so much the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Colleagues, This amendment addresses two concerns I have with this bill. The amendment is simple. It delays the bill implementation by 2 years. My first concern is that it addresses the nationwide shortage of paper bags in production. It allows the supply chain to simply catch up with the increase in demand that this bill will create. My second concern hits home. Being born and raised in Montgomery County, I personally have benefited from the vast opportunities of employment being a former Montgomery County resident. However, moving to Western Maryland, now embracing the stories and the struggles of the constituents I now serve, grappling with the struggles of finding a job. My thoughts are as that if we delay the 2 years that this amendment would, it would allow Verso paper mill located in economically challenged Western Maryland by being able to come alive again and employ some of the people who may have lost their job. Colleagues, over 850 union jobs were lost. And due to its location in Maryland, it remains very, very hard to repurpose, retrain, and rehire. The Plastic Bag Reduction Act may, although not created for this reason, may help put food on the table of a displaced worker. I thank you for this consideration of accepting this compassionate amendment to a region that has been hit so hard economically. Thank you.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to be incredibly respectful and grateful to this delegate who is seeing this bill as an opportunity for his community and an opportunity for economic growth for his community. And I respect and honor him for that. I would say most people wouldn't use this as an opportunity, and he is. However, I do want to say that delaying the implementation of the Plastic Bag Reduction Act would not hinder the paper mill, the paper company, from doing exactly what he is saying that it needs to do and can do, which would be to rebuild, rebrand, and then boost itself to meet the new potential demand that the Reduction Act would bring. And so, respectfully, I would ask the body to resist this amendment because it doesn't help and it doesn't necessarily hurt him. I think this opportunity, with or without an extension, helps his district tremendously. So, thank you.
Is there any further debate? The question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk would take the call. The amendment fails. Any other amendments to the bill, to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 37. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 777, Power Plant Research Program, review of application for Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, alterations. Favor board is amended, adopted.
Maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I see that the good gentleman, the author of the bill, has risen. I had an amendment drafted, but I don't think I'll probably have to offer it. I just wanted to confirm and appreciate, had a good opportunity, had a conversation with the gentleman from Baltimore County yesterday. My concern and potential amendment related to making sure that in addition to a sort of traditional quote-unquote power plant that would go through this additional process of having DNR and MDE weigh into the certificate process, that the intent and the language of the bill would also impose those additional requirements for a wind or a solar generating facility that was within the Public Service Commission's jurisdiction. So they have to reach a certain level. That's what my amendment was intended to. You advised me yesterday, and am I correct in getting that on the record of the intent that the bill would in fact cover that? So if there's a wind or solar project that's undertaken that is within the PSC's jurisdiction, not one of the smaller ones that's not, if it's within the PSC's jurisdiction for the certificate process, MDE and DNR are going to have to weigh in under the bill under the same way that it would be for a traditional quote-unquote power plant.
Yes, I want to thank the good delegate for expressing his concerns. And delegate, you are right. The conversation that we had yesterday was a generating station with a megawatt of up to less than 70 megawatts would not be subjected. I mean, it's covered by the PSC, but it would get an exception. You could apply for an exception there. Yeah. But those stations, they are under the auspices of the PSC. HB 777 doesn't, I mean, the DNR and then the MDC will definitely cover those. But here again, that exception starts at 70 megawatts and less.
And less. So that was my only intent, is that we're treating apples and apples. So if someone wants to open a traditional power plant and the PSC certificate process obtains and is required, and your bill's adding these additional steps, which makes some sense, we're doing the same thing if it's the type of sort of wind or solar project only within the PSC's jurisdiction. I think you've stated that, and if that's the case and would already obtain under the bill, then there's no point for further amendment, and I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're quite welcome, sir.
Are there recognizing the minority whip?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader rise, please?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sure.
I'm reading the PSC's testimony. Did you accept their amendments on page 2 of their testimony? They look minor, and I'm assuming that you did.
Yes, we did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Is there any further debate? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Calendar of third reading House bills number 30. Clerk will read the first bill. Oh, yeah. Clerk, take the call. I'm trying to rush through things. There are 133 members present. The House is still in session. Calendar of third reading House bills number 30. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 30 offers Office of People's Counsel alterations, Office of People's Counsel Environmental Reform Act.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 30, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 80, Department of Transportation Urban Tree Program Establishment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. There being 118 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 80, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 85, Baltimore County Workers' Compensation Permanent Partial Disability Detention and Correctional Officers.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 119 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 85, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 109, Public Safety Maryland Swimming Pool and Spa Standards Adoption.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker. I got it.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 97 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 109, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 295, Water Pollution, Stormwater Management Regulations and Watershed Implementation Plans, Review and Update.
Is on third reading and final
Madam Speaker.
passage. Recognizing the gentle lady from Carroll.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the floor leader a couple questions. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to
No
look at this
problem,
yesterday. Can you explain what the bill does?
Absolutely, Delegate, and it's very important. So I want to explain current law to help understand what this law would do. So currently, the current law requires that the Department of the Environment adopt rules and regulations that establish criteria and procedures for stormwater management. This bill would require them to actually update these plans every 5 years, as well as add precipitation data, which it hasn't done for the last 30 years.
I just was quickly reading Maryland Department of Environment's testimony very, very quickly, and it basically says the department agrees that stormwater regulations should be updated to reflect the most recent precipitation data. But having this completed by December 1st, 2022 is not realistic. The industry standard for participation estimates is something in the National Oceanic and NOAA. The latest update for Maryland occurred in 2004, so the data is almost 20 years old. So recognizing the need to update the data, the department is working in coordination with MDT to get it updated. So how are they going to update it if the NOAA has not updated the data since 2004?
That's a great question. So from what I understand is the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is going to supply them. Well, first of all, I should say the bill says precipitation data that is readily available. So if it's available and for free, if, for instance, someone like the Chesapeake Bay Foundation has it, they will give them that data. The bill also states that by the 1st of this year, they need to report to us, the General Assembly, essentially to say what they're intending to do. And then after that date, and to proceeding the next year, then they have to come and tell us how essentially they're going to do it.
Thank you. I'm just reading their
no problem.
Their letter of
if you have more
information.
questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, thank you. I think we're putting a little bit the cart before the horse. And I'm not sure if the Chesapeake Bay Foundation are experts on how to collect precipitation data, but it just seems like there's a lot of questions in here. Did you guys consider delaying the date so that they could figure out, get the NOAA data updated?
So I want to start by saying the Maryland Department of the Environment is actually fine with this. Forgive me for somewhat misquoting, but Chesapeake Bay Foundation will be on hand to provide that data, but there is a wealth of data regarding precipitation that can be gathered not only regionally, but from the Atlas 14.
Thank you.
So you're welcome.
And this is a very important issue for all of our counties and municipalities because they have to follow these watershed improvement plans. So there's a lot of questions I have. We're on third reader. I'm just going to vote no only because it seems like there's a lot of questions and I wish we had put it at a later date on this, but thank you for answering my questions.
You're quite welcome.
The gentleman from Talbot in the annex.
Thank you, Speaker. I just have a quick question for the floor leader about the bill.
Yes, Delegate.
So our district, you know, we probably have more shoreline than most any other district in the country, including all the shoreline of Talbot, Dorchester, and then running down to Wacomico County, right off of Bloodsworth Island. We're doing a lot to try to improve the quality of the bay. And I was looking at this bill, and I was trying to understand how these requirements would apply to Baltimore City, which is currently under a court consent decree. So my question to you is how would this impact the way stormwater management is regulated in Baltimore City?
Thank you so much, Delegate. I believe that it does not actually affect us.
You answered my question.
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 99 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 295, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 839, State Department of Assessments and Taxation, list of business entities not filing annual report.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will...
To explain my vote, Madam Speaker.
All right. The gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to point out that this today is the 1-year anniversary of the COVID-19 orders. And this bill, I'm proud to vote for because it actually extends a grace period to our small businesses that have been hit the worst. So I just want to take a moment to remember this day and appreciate the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Clerk will call the roll. There'll be 132 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 839, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of the third reading, House Bill number 31. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1048, Election Law, Permanent Absentee Ballot List.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any
Madam
debate?
Speaker.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, what's interesting to me and quite sad is currently in our country, there's some really weird things happening politically. There's some out there that think that Republicans want to prevent certain groups of Americans from voting. And there are certain people out there who think Democrats want to have all the fraud possible to produce the outcomes that they want in our election. And if you watch CNN, you get one line, and if you watch Fox News, you get another line. Where somewhere in between all of that is the truth. And quite frankly, I think it does a great disservice to our culture and our country that these types of things are going on in America today. And it's incumbent upon all of us, I believe, as legislators, to be a little braver and a little riskier in pushing back on some of the nonsense that's going on in America. Yesterday, some Republicans here offered some amendments to this bill because there are real and legitimate concerns about a permanent absentee voter list being used in a way that would be wrong. There are examples around the country that are real and legitimate where certain political actors will go to people who get absentee ballots or mail-in ballots and coerce them and threaten them and treat them badly, and they take their ballot if they comply. And this isn't good, and it shouldn't happen, and it's not widespread, but it happens. It's proven. People have been convicted of it. And it was said yesterday that we don't allow that in this state. The trouble is, our current law as it relates to ballot harvesting is rather weak. If you look at the laws around the nation, many states have a stronger law that prevents that type of thing from happening, and I plan to introduce legislation next year to strengthen that part of the law. But I don't want anybody to suggest, especially in this body, that we were operating in bad faith. Bad faith means we sought to deceive people, and we're not trying to deceive anybody. We're just trying to have elections that all of us can feel good about, have confidence in. I remember like 10 years ago, a legislator from Montgomery County brought in legislation that we all supported to have a paper ballot system to get away from some of the troubles we've seen around the nation, because a rather liberal professor said the system could be manipulated. You know, why can't we get back to the days where we're looking at each other and saying, you know, I see your point, I hear where you're coming from, let's work it out together, and get away from this time that we're in where we're suggesting that the other side is operating in bad faith. So I support the idea of making it easier for people to vote by absentee ballot, but I have some simple, legitimate concerns about the way that the law is drafted, the way that the bill's before us, and the way that the law is drafted currently as it relates to ballot harvesting. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote against this, but I want you to know, I don't think anybody here is operating in bad faith. And I bring that up today because I think it's important for us to take a stand against putting those kind of ideas out there into the public. We have to be better as legislators than that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Talbot in the Annex.
Thank you, Speaker. I just wanted to, I kind of beat this bush pretty hard yesterday. You know, the arguments were made that that the Board of Elections is going to update these lists and keep track of these lists, and I tried to point out to everybody, and I think you can appreciate the points that I made, is that, you know, these lists are very inaccurate, and there are all kinds of problems with trying to keep these lists. There was we had a discussion yesterday about ballot harvesting, and that ballot harvesting is already illegal and it's already a crime. And I didn't take the microphone yesterday because I had talked too much, but I thought about that, you know, and what is a crime? You know, in Baltimore City right now, tell me what's an enforceable crime. Is ballot harvesting going to make the cut? I mean, you guys have seen the news on what's prosecuted and what's not prosecuted. Some of the things that aren't prosecuted in Baltimore City, I think, are much more severe than, or as severe, I wouldn't say much more, but are as severe as ballot harvesting. So the argument that everything is good and that we're ready for this and we're going in the right direction, it just doesn't pass the test. And I'm not talking about the Johnny Mounts test. I'm talking about the test when you go home and talk to your constituents about what the state is doing. Now, if you talk to people about elections right now, we've got early voting, we've got absentee voting, we've got election day voting. You know, what is our election process turning into? I mean, are we making it better or are we making it worse? Some access to elections, to voting is critical, right? Everybody's got to be able to vote. But if we get to a point where there's no more access, then we have completely diluted the quality of our elections, which is the foundation of our democracy. That's how we're all here. That's how our government operates. It's not a partisan argument that I'm making. And these are very real concerns. I'm not making this up. I mean, we know in certain places, prosecutors prosecute different things. And we made a very simple amendment yesterday about ballot harvesting, and that was unfortunately defeated on a party line vote. Well, the problems with elections don't have party lines. The problems with elections, when they don't go well, they affect everyone. So please think about that. It's not too late to vote against this bill. You know, it's the future of our state and it's the fabric of our community. Please vote no.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Frederick.
I just want to kind of reiterate some of the sentiment, what we've heard. I mean, look, you know, in 2016, a lot of my colleagues across the aisle didn't have a lot of faith in the systems. We just saw it again in 2020. Colleagues on my side of the aisle, you know, have similar concerns that my colleagues across the aisle had in 2016. And I just bring it up because I think we should be focusing on legislation that builds confidence in the electoral system, not raises more doubt. And I think that it's something we should really consider. It's something that we should look at. So look, I mean, I'll say it again. This bill's going to probably raise more doubt, and we're going to have to deal with it. And that's why I'll be voting against it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the minority leader for his comments because I agree we should not be making assumptions about people's motivations or casting aspersions. And, you know, for a number of years now, we've had this debate about election laws. Like, these debates are not new. The same lines have been used over and over again. Frankly, they happened long before last year's election. But I'm hearing this reference repeatedly to we should work together. And yes, we should work together based on fact. And the fact is that the American election system and the Maryland election system is more secure and free of fraud than at any point in the history of this country. That's a fact. Voter fraud is vanishingly rare. Does it happen? Of course it happens, but it's vanishingly rare. And yet we hear over and over again, well, we got to be careful about fraud. Well, we got to be careful about fraud. And that's constantly used as a reason to not give people the options to exercise their sacred constitutional right of voting. You know what this bill will mean? I've got senior centers across my district with folks that have tremendous mobility challenges. They can't go to a polling place. It's too difficult, but they still want to vote. They still want a voice. This will mean that they don't have to go through the trouble every single election of reapplying over and over and over and over and over again for an absentee ballot. This means that people with disabilities and the elderly who have trouble getting to those early voting sites and getting to election day voting sites will have an easier time of voting. So for those voters, I will absolutely be casting a green vote, and I commend the sponsor and floor leader of this bill for the tremendous work that she has been doing to make sure all of our citizens have the ability to exercise their right to vote. I just want to finish by answering a question that the gentleman in the annex asked a second ago. Will this bill make our elections better or worse? The answer is better. I vote green.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Culver.
From Culver. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I think the minority leader did a great job, to say the least, in framing this, really did, and framing our concerns as Republicans. And I want to tell you a specific term that we like to use in the Republican Party that we would like to see if the other side really does want to work together, and this is the truth. It's called chain of custody of ballot. So when you vote in person, you mark your ballot, of course, and then you scan that ballot in to the machine. That chain of custody was in your possession the entire time. As soon as you have a permanent absentee ballot list, and you have the opportunity for ballot harvesting, because it is legal in Maryland, I have the code right here, 9-307, then the chain of custody of your ballot is broken. So let's talk about how that happens. So let's say that you are incapable of leaving your home for any reason. You should be able to cast your ballot. Of course. You should be able to cast an absentee ballot. We already have that in law. But with ballot harvesting, someone can come and collect those ballots, especially with the permanent absentee ballot list. And while they are supposed to get an affidavit and permission as the agent of the voter, while they're supposed to do that, there's no requirement in law that they ever demonstrate that and provide it to the State Board of Elections. So here's what is happening and can happen. You can go get the permanent absentee ballot list. You can go to all those individuals. You don't have to go through all the paperwork. And you can then put all of those ballots in a drop box or a mailbox. The chain of custody of the ballot has been interrupted. So, with Republicans, and this is the God's honest truth, we just want chain of custody to be fixed. So here's an idea. Not just complaints, but an idea. So what if you have a permanent absentee ballot list and you have individuals who cannot get to the drop box or to the mailbox? What if instead, for those individuals, we had members of the Board of Elections in those counties collect them? In which case, the chain of custody is only broken once. But this bill allows the chain of custody to be broken many times. Many opportunities with ballot harvesting and with the break of the chain of custody. We have an opportunity to fix it. This bill doesn't do it. It could have, but it doesn't. It actually makes the elections less secure because it fundamentally breaks the chain of custody of your vote, which is our issue on the Republican side. So for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, I'm voting red on this bill.
Is there any further debate? Sponsor of the bill.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for the spirited conversation on this bill. I'm really proud of this body and the work that we've done over the years around voting rights, around accessibility, around equity to ensure access to the ballot for every single Marylander. And this bill is no different. This bill takes our existing secure and convenient absentee ballot process and makes it even more accessible to voters. There have been many distractions, many of them outlined today when it comes to this bill. But just because a group of voters have been lied to about fraud and red herrings and unfounded concerns around ballot harvesting does not mean that we have to embrace it in this chamber. This is a bill that will increase convenience for voters, whether they vote red or they vote blue. This is a bill that will ensure that my constituent that I talked about yesterday, who missed the deadline and is immobile and didn't have anyone to be a duly authorized agent for her, that she will never miss an election ever again because she can join this permanent absentee ballot list and be sent her ballot. This is a bill that will help voters who voted absentee or mail-in the last election for the first time and realize that they love it and they want to continue voting absentee. This is one that will benefit all of our constituents. Now, Maryland has been a leader around voting rights and voting issues in a number of different ways. We are often the first, and that's something that I'm so proud of. But this is actually not one of those issues. There are many states that have already done this. California has been doing this since 2001 with none of the issues that have been outlined. So I urge us to stop the distractions, to stop embracing some of this harmful terminology and scare tactics, and to vote green on this bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While I'm very fond of the previous speaker, I do want to say again, our media is telling us different things. Your media is not telling you about verified voter fraud. Yesterday in Mississippi, a woman was indicted for absentee ballot voter fraud. Last week in New Jersey, 2 city councilmen were indicted in absentee ballot voter fraud. So we're not misleading, and in suggesting that we're buying into lies is insulting. It's the truth. These things happen. Is it widespread? I don't believe so. Have some people used it to mislead people for their own political agendas? Yes. What we're suggesting is we could do this one a little better. Our media is doing all of us a disservice. But don't question my integrity when I'm saying to you that we're fine with permanent absentee ballot lists. We just want to have a little bit more safeguards in that process because of the news that my media tells me but doesn't tell you. A judge has indicted people, thrown entire elections out recently, which is the right thing to do. I mean, there's a process, there's a legal process. But we should have safeguards against it, and we do have some in this state. What I'm suggesting is we could do a little better, which is why I can't support the bill as it's before us. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the committee chair.
The minority leader talked about the different media, but what I know from the media is that the secretaries of state in all of our 50 states found no problems with the elections last fall. And he's right. There were some people trying to make up those claims of fraud for their own benefit, and many who believed it. I just want to simply express that when the gentleman from Culver County talks about Section 9307 and says that that does not talk about ballot harvesting being illegal, well, that's just simply not correct. That's not the expertise. That's not what the election law experts say. That's the section that talks about the designated agent who can bring in ballots for people. That's what that section is talking about. Ballot harvesting is already illegal, but certainly people who, excuse me, I have the floor. Ballot harvesting is already illegal. That's a fact. But people who live in nursing homes, people who live in other situations are allowed to have somebody bring in their ballot for them. That is part of the law, as well it should be, because of those who are disabled. This law, like so many others we're trying to pass, are to increase the franchise, make it easier, and not to make it harder. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman in the annex from Anne Arundel County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'll make this quick because I want to speak to the last comments that, yeah, it is illegal, but we shouldn't make it easier to break that illegality. Drinking underage is illegal as well. But to stop that, we asked for an ID, and that was outright rejected yesterday. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I was old enough, I'm old enough to remember when Election Day was on one single day. It was a day about symbolism where we all came together and we're going to elect our elected leaders. And there was accountability, and it brought people together. And somehow over the last 10 years, we've stretched Election Day into election month. We have early voting that starts 7-8 days out before Election Day. Originally, absentee ballots were designed for our military folks or overseas that we wanted to participate in our election, or people that could just not get to the polls that day for some whatever reason. Now we're creating a permanent list that has problems. We pointed that out. And you know, people in the chamber, we can talk about fraud. You know, I like to use the term rigged because that's a much more easier term to understand and probably defend. Perception is reality. And right now the perception is that we do have some voter integrity problems. And at that point, it's our job as elected officials to probably come together and not exacerbate those fears, but to bring people together and quiet them. Because the reason why we've had so many years of peaceful transfers of power in this country is because people have faith in our election systems. And if you don't have faith in your election system, that's when you have people rioting, because that's their alternative. So we need to restore faith in the process, and I believe that creating something permanent that you're not never apply, like that doesn't make sense. You're going to be permanently absent. It's not a good idea, and I'm unfortunately going to vote red on this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing. Clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1048, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. That ends the work at the desk. Just in case you're wondering, we will not be back this evening or Saturday. All committee bill hearings are listed on the Maryland General Assembly website. Quorum called before adjournment.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker? Just before we adjourn, I want to remind the members that Monday, March 8th, is the last day to introduce bills and bond initiatives without suspending, or the suspension, rather, of the rules. They need to be to the clerk no later than Monday. So make sure you take your bills to the clerk's office by Monday. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Clerk will take the call. There being 131 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I'm about to move to recess to a session on Monday, but it's a pro forma session on Monday, so the main body of the House does not need to be back until Tuesday at 10 a.m. for a regular session. Madam Speaker, I move to the House stand recessed until Monday, March 8th at 4:30 p.m., Legislative Day, March 1st, for a pro forma session.